show cause notice. See, this is very important because this is the any liability which comes other than, of course, for non-filers where an assessment order is passed, that is final. You don't require a 73, 74. More, all other cases, you have to issue a notice under section 73 and 74. You should understand what is the limitation period for 73, what is the limitation period for 74, and what is the difference between 73 and 74. So basically 73, time limit for issue of show cause notice. There has to be a need for the time limit. Initiation of the recovery proceedings cannot be open-ended scheme. So it cannot be your always a hook is on your head. Anytime they may come and ask money from you. So there is a time limit which is mentioned. If you cross the time limit, they cannot ask any details from you. There has to be a certainty, stability, and succor to the taxpayers. That is, you know very well, 2015 onwards, there will not be any data. Before 2015 onwards or 2016 onwards, there will not be any data asked from you. So if this section was not there, you will always have a fear. 2002 data also can be asked. 2015 data also can be asked. So just to remove that fear and have a peaceful taxing life, they have brought section 73 and 74. 73 is a normal period of limitation. It is basically for non-fraud where there is no willful misstatement or there is no suppression of facts or with the intent to evade tax. In these situations only section 73 notice can be issued. It can be issued by the proper officer if it appears to him that tax has not been paid, tax has been short paid. So this is all unintentionally it is done. It is not intentionally done. So taxes has not been paid, short paid, erroneously refund has been claimed, ITC has been wrongly claimed or utilized. So it is to be other than the reason of fraud, willful misstatement of facts or willful suppression of facts. Issue of show cause notice is mandatory in this situation. And word is shall. So whenever there is any liability, notice has to be issued under section 73(1). Show cause notice to specify amount of tax. It's very, very important. Show cause notice is not vague. It has to be very specific. What is the tax which is short paid? What is the tax not paid? What is the ITC which is wrongly claimed as refund? What is the ITC which is wrongly claimed, utilized, availed? So you have to be very, very specific in show cause notice. Notice should also propose the recovery. So interest also should be mentioned in show cause notice. Notice also to propose the levy of penalty under the provision of CGST Act. So this has to be very, very clear. Show cause notice should not miss anything. So basically time limit for issue of section 73 notices 3 years is basically 73 time limit under 73(10) is 3 years from the due date of furnishing annual return. So action under section 73 has to be taken within 3 years from the due date of furnishing of annual return. So that is what I was told before also. We always ask for the extension of filing of annual return. We should never ask for extension of filing of annual return, but it should be waiver of late fee because all these provisions also get extended. So 3 years time period, if it is a non-fraud case, if there is no willful misstatement, then 3 years from the due date of filing of annual return. Notice under section 73 has to be issued 3 months prior to this due date. So I think I have given a, So I've given an example. For 17-18, the due date for annual return was 7/2/2020. So due date of filing annual return was 7/2/2020. So 3 years from there it is 7/2/2023. So 3 months before, that is 7/11/2022, notice has to be issued. Similarly, 18-19 is 31st December 2020 was the due date. So notice has to be issued by 30th/9/2023. And for 19-20, it was notice should be issued by 21st December 2023. So if they don't issue notice in this period, they cannot issue notice under section 73. This is what is happening in service tax. Mind you, they are just giving you notices telling 26As is not matching with your service tax return, income tax return, income is not matching with your service tax return. Limitation period for service tax is not checked by the department. They are just left and right sending notices to you, and everybody is running and giving details also. You have to ensure this limitation period is followed. If any notice for 1718 is issued after 7/11/2022, it is not a valid notice. You should straight away contest the limitation period. 74, everything same as per 73, but 74 is on for fraud cases, for willful misstatement, and if there is a suppression of facts. If these are the cases which is proved, then notice can be issued under section 74, and the time limit for 74 is 5 years. So 73 is 3 years, this is 5 years. So even you might have done some fraud, even though you might have done some willful misstatement, after 5 years, if they find out, they cannot issue notice to you. So even though fraud you have done, there is a time limit of 5 years. So again, in this example, for 1718, they have got time till 7/8/2024. For 1819, they got time till 30th/6/2025. And for 1920, they got time till 30th/9/2025 to issue notice under section 74. But mind you, they have to prove you have done the fraud or willful misstatement. They cannot just take some figure from somewhere and say there is a difference and limitation period under section 74 can be invoked. So this is what I was telling, repeated plea for extension of due date. So please don't do it. Ask for waiver of late fee. So fraud, again, what is the fraud? I think I mentioned some few case laws. You can refer those case laws. This PPT will be shared with you. So willful misstatement, suppression of facts also, there are some case laws which I think you can refer to see what is willful misstatement, what is suppression of facts. So if your income tax return mentions a turnover of 1 crore, whereas your service tax return mentions 60 lakhs, whether it is a willful misstatement or suppression of facts, it's a question of, I think, case to case. It's not necessary just because two things are not matching, it is suppression of facts. This is what I was telling. Suppose department has to issue notice under section, maybe for scrutiny ASMT 10, but you can hardly see any notices which mention ASMT 10. They just give you a letter with the DIN number. Whether that notice can be contested. It can be contested, but see how this section 160 subsection 2 is giving cover to the department. What it says is, the service of any notice, order, or communication shall not be called in question if the notice, order, or communication, as the case may be, has already been acted upon by the person to whom it is issued, or where such notice has not been called in question at or in the earlier proceedings commenced, continued, or finalized pursuant to such notice, order, or communication. SSC cannot see this section 161 is basically, it talks about if there is any mistake, error in the notice, like ASMT 10 had to be mentioned, but they have not mentioned, the notice doesn't become illegal, or it doesn't de facto becomes bad. What it says is, if there is any documentary procedural errors, it can be waived off. And what this section says is, if you get a show cause notice and you reply without challenging this validity of the notice, later on at the point of a later stage of appeal or procedural matter, you cannot raise this point. That means you have to raise this objection now itself in the first reply. Later on, you cannot. In service tax also, the same provision applies. Suppose you get a notice which is beyond the limitation period, and in your first reply, you don't challenge that limitation, and you give all the data, you give with a letter telling these are the data provided, and later on, he passes an order with a big liability. You go to the court and say, now it's a limitation period. Court will not accept because you didn't challenge the limitation period in the first reply itself. So this section 162 also is very clear. SSC cannot question the validity of the notice once he acts upon the notice. It is time. If time is not sufficient, seek extension. So again, how the reply has to be, facts of the case has to be clear while submitting, validity of the notice, check the validity of the notice, merits of the case, extended period of limitation, requantification of demand, interest of penalties. So I am not going into detail of all this. Again, validity of the notice I have explained.
We have similar provision in Income Tax Act, sir, in 292 BB. So same similar provision.
So whether the service of notice is valid.
Yes, it has to be objected.
So DIN is mandatory. So circular number 128 dated 23rd December 2019 has made DIN mandatory. So DIN is mandatory for state officers. So DIN is mandatory for any communication from the State Department. Hello? Anybody there? Is DIN mandatory for state communications? DIN is mandatory only for central. It is not. It's not mandatory for state because there is a circular by the CGST. SGST has not brought in any. State officers have not brought in any circulars for DIN. So DIN is not mandatory for state officers. Okay. So again, extended period of limitation, some case laws are mentioned. This is very important.